In 2012, a wildlife sanctuary, Wildlife Wonderland, in Bass Victoria, a state in Australia, was shut down. The park shuttered due to concerns regarding its animal welfare and operating without appropriate licenses. But perhaps even stranger than the story of the park itself is the dead great white shark hanging suspended in a tank of formaldehyde, forever preserving its corpse, making it a haunting scene for anyone who might just stumble upon it during urban exploration endeavors. And there's nothing more terrifying than sharks in unexpected places. I'm May, and this is Brain Soup. When I was a little girl, I was almost certain there were sharks in whatever body of water I was in or around, regardless of how absolutely illogical that belief was. For instance, I had a completely irrational fear that there was a shark in every single swimming pool I ever visited. I don't, for the record, enjoy swimming, but apparently if you're a child, you are legally obligated to enjoy being in the water, or you're some kind of freak of nature. So I was sent to various gyms with pools, always swam at hotels, and even spent a good amount of time in the pool at my aunt's house up in wine country in California and in the summers. The idea of sharks in places they shouldn't be, however, I don't think is unique to me. I'm fairly certain it's a fear many children had, and while I personally don't suffer from submechanophobia, I do understand why fake sharks in water might put some people off. Submechanophobia, for the uninitiated, is the fear of submerged man-made objects, either partially or entirely underwater. These can be shipwrecks, statues, sea mines, old buildings, or even just mundane items such as chains and miscellaneous debris. However, there's one in particular that seems to really have taken hold on the concept, and that is animatronics. A lot of these can be seen on YouTube, and generally they're from abandoned, defunct, decommissioned theme parks, dilapidated, rotting robots that are still sitting either half-submerged or fully submerged in various pools of water with various depths to them. Some of them are so goofy, though, it's hard to imagine anyone being afraid of it. But some of them make a lot of sense, and none so more than, in my opinion, sharks. Because, well, a lot of what you see in animatronics aren't real creatures. Take the original Disneyland submarine ride, for instance, and the sea monster that used to reside in it. For all we know, sea monsters don't exist. I like to believe they do. The world is far more fun when it's full of whimsy one can't properly disprove of. But overall, they're just characters or weird creations, not animals. This is why robotic sharks would make a great deal of sense to have submechanophobia over. It's why the Jaws ride at Universal Studios was particularly terrifying. Originally opening in Orlando in 1990, the ride, based on the film series, is pretty basic. It used tour boats to take guests through a harbor of the fictional Amity Island, and what begins as a leisurely tour quickly turns sour when you are attacked by the Great White bearing the franchise's name. The ride eventually closed in 2012, but the point remains. Here's a robot, but it's a shark in a large body of water, and this is coming at you. Interactive terror at its finest. Sure, unlike the corpse found in Melbourne, this shark isn't real, but that lack of realness doesn't take away from its creepiness, in my opinion. It's still unnerving to see sharks in places you might not expect. Okay, sure, one would certainly expect to see a shark in a ride based on a movie about the shark, but you get my point. But if neither the Melbourne shark or the Jaws ride do anything for you, perhaps the next one will. In the depths of murky green water in Lake Neuchatel in Romandy, Switzerland, is an enormous, terrifying shark statue. The model, which has an odd mixture of cartoonishly exaggerated yet semi-realistic features, appears to be floating thanks to its supporting structure, giving it the illusion that it's preparing to come at you with full force. Apparently, according to Redditors who did some digging, the shark was a prop in the film Shock a Lock. It's featured in one of the scenes from the 1975 film, which was created by a group of 176 kids. The film was, as expected, about a giant shark terrorizing a small town. However, the film, for whatever reason, was never finished, and frankly, nobody really knows how the shark wound up in the lake, which, to me, is a little bit creepier than the fact that he's there to begin with. Perhaps he was put there as a means of promotion, perhaps for scenes in the movie that never materialized, or perhaps, after production stalled indefinitely, the crew dumped him inside as a prank to anyone willing to go diving in that particular spot. And considering that it's a 20-foot-long replica made of fiberglass, yeah, you'd likely shit your pants if you swam up on it. But the shark that we mentioned at the start, her name is Rosie. She now currently resides in the Crystal World Exhibition Centre in Devon Meadows, Australia, where she is undergoing restoration. Initially killed after becoming caught in fishing nets on the coast of South Australia in '97, the Seal Rock Sea Life Centre showed interest in purchasing her, before Wildlife Wonderland did, well, exactly that. As Rosie was being transported to Wildlife Wonderland in a refrigerated truck, it was impounded by the government of South Australia because a woman had been reported missing, thus requiring a necropsy of the shark at the South Australian Museum. Following this rather pointless operation, she was then preserved in the custom-built tank of formaldehyde upon arrival at her destination. In fact, the only reason she was still in the park after the shutdown was because when the shutdown occurred, the RSPCA and the Department of Sustainability and Environment Victoria only required that they surrender live animals to them, and Rosie, obviously, was not alive. I do find it strange, however, to keep a preserved shark corpse in the presence of live animals on your wildlife sanctuary, but I guess it led to a pretty good story. The interesting thing is, Rosie isn't the first one this happened to. See, Rosie died in '97, but there was another shark in '91 that we should talk about. The physical impossibility of death in the mind of someone living, which might be the longest title ever given to a work of art, is a piece created in '91 by Damien Hirst, an English artist. It consists of a 14-foot preserved tiger shark submerged in formalin in a glass panel display case. In fact, this wasn't an unusual theme for Hirst. He became famous for a series of artworks in which dead animals, including a sheep and a cow alongside the shark, are preserved, sometimes having been dissected in formaldehyde. Commissioned in '91 by Charles Saatchi, who then sold it in 2004 to Stephen A. Cohen for an undisclosed amount, though widely reported to have been between at least $8 to $12 million, the shark eventually began to deteriorate and was replaced with a new specimen in 2006. It was even on loan to the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York City from 2007 to 2010. This shark came off of Hervey Bay in Queensland, Australia, by a fisherman commissioned to catch them, and was replaced by another shark caught off the Queensland coast and shipped to Hirst in a 2-month journey when he wanted to replace it. Hirst later in an interview was posed a philosophical question as to whether replacing the shark meant that the result could still be considered the same artwork, to which he replied, "It's a big dilemma. Artists and conservators have different opinions about what's important, the original artwork or its original intention. As I come from a conceptual art background, I think it should be the intention. It's the same piece." Oddly enough, this could be applied to most of the sharks we've discussed today. If Rosie undergoes restoration, is she still the same shark? Certainly a bit different, seeing as she wasn't an intended art piece, but still, it all comes down to change, doesn't it? One thing going from one state of being to another. A shark dumped in a lake, a shark dead in a tank, a shark defunct in an amusement park. All once one thing, now another. And really, isn't life all about transition? Life to death? I don't know. There's just a lot we can learn from sharks.